My name is Maria Alvarez. I'm 71 years old, and 3 months ago, my daughter-in-law Jessica looked me straight in the eye and said the cruelest words I've ever heard. Old people don't need money, Maria. You should be grateful we're even taking care of you. But what Jessica didn't know, what she couldn't have possibly imagined, was that I had $250,000 sitting in accounts she'd never heard of. And the way I used that money to teach her a lesson? Well, that's a story that's going to shock you more than it shocked her. Let me start from the beginning, because this isn't just about greed. It's about a woman who thought she could manipulate an old lady, and how that old lady turned out to be much smarter than anyone gave her credit for. I came to this country in 1972, when I was 19 years old, carrying nothing but a worn suitcase and my mother's gold wedding ring sewn into the lining of my coat. My husband Carlos and I had dreams bigger than the small village we left behind in Michoacan, but we knew those dreams would require sacrifice. For 35 years, Carlos worked construction while I cleaned houses during the day and took in sewing at night. Every dollar we saved went toward two goals: buying our own home and making sure our son Diego had opportunities we never had. We lived in a tiny apartment above a bakery, ate beans and rice most nights, and wore the same clothes until they fell apart. But we were building something, a foundation for our family's future. When Diego was born in 1975, I made a promise to myself and to God. This child would never know the poverty we'd escaped. He would go to college, have a profession, marry a good woman, and give us grandchildren who would carry our family name with pride. I kept that promise even when it nearly broke us financially. Diego got his engineering degree, landed a good job at an aerospace company, and at 32, he married Jessica, a pretty blonde woman from Orange County who seemed sweet enough at first. The first warning sign should have been at their wedding. Jessica's family arrived in expensive cars, wearing designer clothes, talking about their vacation homes and investment portfolios. When they met Carlos and me, I saw something flicker in their eyes. Not quite disgust, but definitely disappointment that their daughter was marrying into a family like ours. "How quaint," Jessica's mother said when she saw our modest gift, a hand-embroidered tablecloth I'd spent months making. "Did you make this yourself, Maria?" The way she said it made my beautiful work sound like something from a garage sale. But I smiled and nodded, because this was my son's wedding day, and I wouldn't let anyone's snobbery ruin it. For the first few years, Jessica was polite enough. She'd smile when we visited, make small talk about Diego's work, and even complimented my cooking occasionally. But I noticed things: the way she'd check her phone constantly during our conversations, how she'd steer Diego away when he tried to help us with household repairs, the subtle eye rolls when Carlos told his stories in his accented English. When Carlos died of a heart attack 5 years ago, everything changed. The funeral was the last time Jessica pretended to care about our family. She stood beside Diego at the service, wearing an appropriately black dress and dabbing her eyes with a tissue. But I caught her checking her watch during the eulogy, and she was the first one to leave the reception. "Mom," Diego said a week after we buried his father, "Jessica and I have been talking. We think you should sell the house and move into a senior community. It would be safer for you, and you'd have people around." I looked at my son, this man I'd sacrificed everything for, and saw Jessica's influence written all over his face. "Diego, I've lived in this house for 28 years. Your father and I paid it off completely. Why would I sell it? Because it's too big for one person, and the maintenance costs are only going to get higher as you get older. The house is paid for. The only costs are utilities and property taxes, which I can afford." "But Mom, what if you fall? What if you have a medical emergency?" Jessica thinks. Jessica thinks what? Diego looked uncomfortable. "She thinks it would be better for everyone if you had professional care available." Better for everyone. Not better for me. Better for everyone. I was starting to understand what that meant. Over the next few months, the pressure intensified. Diego would call with stories about elderly people who'd fallen and couldn't get help, about seniors who'd been scammed out of their life savings, about the benefits of community living. Jessica would send me brochures for retirement homes, each one more expensive than the last. "Look at this place, Maria," she'd say, spreading glossy pamphlets across my kitchen table. "They have activities, meal service, housekeeping. You wouldn't have to worry about anything." I don't want to worry about anything. I like taking care of my own home. But it's so much work for someone your age. And honestly, this neighborhood isn't what it used to be. That was a lie. Our neighborhood was the same working class community it had always been: safe, quiet, filled with families who looked out for each other. But to Jessica, working class meant dangerous. The real reason for their pressure became clear 6 months after Carlos died, when Diego brought up the subject of my finances. "Mom, Jessica and I have been thinking. You should let us help you manage your money. You know, make sure your bills are paid on time, help you budget for your retirement." "I've been managing my own money for 70 years, mijo. I think I can handle it." "But what if you forget to pay something? What if someone tries to take advantage of you?" "Has that happened?" "Well, no, but then why are you worried?" Diego exchanged a look with Jessica that I pretended not to see. They thought I was becoming senile, unable to handle my own affairs, or at least that's what they wanted to believe. The truth was, I'd been managing money longer and better than either of them realized. While they were struggling with their mortgage payments and credit card debt, I was sitting on a nest egg they couldn't imagine. You see, Carlos and I hadn't just worked hard, we'd been smart. Every tax refund, every bonus, every dollar we could spare had gone into savings accounts and certificates of deposit. We'd bought a small rental property in the 1980s when prices were low and sold it in 2005 when the market peaked. We'd invested in our neighbor's landscaping business when he was just starting out, and that investment had paid off handsomely over the years. By the time Carlos died, we had accumulated $250,000 in various accounts and investments. Money that Diego and Jessica knew nothing about, because we'd learned long ago that visible wealth changes how people treat you. I kept this money in accounts at 3 different banks, under my maiden name and my married name, in CDs and savings accounts that earned modest but steady interest. I lived off Carlos's pension and Social Security, plus the small inheritance my mother had left me. To anyone looking at my day-to-day finances, I appeared to be a widow living modestly on fixed income, but I was watching and listening, and what I saw and heard made my heart break. The breaking point came 8 months ago during what Jessica called a family meeting. She and Diego arrived at my house on a Sunday afternoon with a folder full of papers and expressions of fake concern. "Mom," Diego began, "we need to talk about your future." "What about my future?" Jessica leaned forward with that patronizing smile I'd grown to hate. "Maria, we love you, and we want what's best for you, but we're concerned about your ability to live independently." "What do you mean?" "Well, last week when we visited, you seemed confused about what day it was." That was a lie. I'd been perfectly clear about the date. I'd even mentioned that it was the anniversary of Carlos's death. "And you've been forgetting to return our phone calls," Diego added. Another lie. I returned every call, usually within hours. "Plus, this house is becoming too much for you to maintain," Jessica continued. "The yard needs work, some of the appliances are getting old, and honestly, the neighborhood is changing." "What's your point?" Jessica opened her folder and pulled out a stack of brochures. "We've found the perfect place for you. Sunset Manor is a beautiful assisted living community with everything you could need." I looked at the brochure. Sunset Manor looked like a hotel, all marble lobbies and manicured gardens. It also cost $4,500 a month. "I can't afford this." That's where we come in, Diego said. If you sell the house, you'll have enough money to cover the costs for several years. And after that? Well, hopefully you won't need to worry about that. The casual cruelty of his words hit me like a slap. My own son was planning my finances around the assumption that I'd be dead within a few years. What if I don't want to sell my house? Jessica's mask slipped for just a moment. Maria, you're being unrealistic. You can't live here forever. What happens when you can't drive anymore? What happens when you can't take care of yourself? I'll figure it out when that time comes. But that's not fair to Diego, Jessica snapped. He shouldn't have to worry about you constantly. He has his own life, his own responsibilities. I never asked him to worry about me. You don't have to ask. He's your son. But if you were in a proper care facility, he could visit you without having to stress about whether you're safe or taking your medications or eating properly. I looked at Diego, waiting for him to defend me, to tell his wife that I was perfectly capable of taking care of myself. Instead, he nodded along with her words. Mom, Jessica's right. We just want you to be safe and happy. I am safe and happy in my own home. Jessica sighed dramatically. Maria, I'm going to be blunt with you. Old people don't need money the way younger people do. You don't have a mortgage. You don't have children to support. You don't have a career to build. Your needs are simple: food, shelter, medical care. That's what places like Sunset Manor provide. And what about my independence? What about my right to choose how I live? Sometimes we have to give up some independence for our own good, Jessica said with that infuriating smile. It's part of getting older. I stared at this woman, this person who had married into my family and now felt entitled to dictate my future, and felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. I need time to think about this. Of course, Diego said quickly. Take all the time you need. But Jessica wasn't done. Just don't take too long, Maria. These places have waiting lists, and we want to make sure you get the best care possible. After they left, I sat in my kitchen and cried, not from sadness, but from rage. How dare they treat me like a burden? How dare they assume I was too stupid or too senile to manage my own life? That night, I made a decision. If Jessica thought old people didn't need money, I was going to show her exactly how wrong she was. I started with research. I spent weeks learning about elder financial abuse, about the legal rights of seniors, about the tactics adult children use to manipulate their parents. What I discovered made me even angrier and more determined. Then I made some phone calls. To lawyers, to financial advisors, to people who could help me protect myself and teach Jessica a lesson she'd never forget. My first call was to Robert Martinez, an attorney who specialized in elder law. I'd found his name in the phone book, and his office was in a modest building downtown, not fancy, but professional. Mrs. Alvarez, he said after I explained my situation, what you're describing is a classic case of financial elder abuse. Your son and daughter-in-law are trying to pressure you into making decisions that benefit them, not you. But they say they're worried about my safety. That may be part of it, but the fact that they want you to sell your house and move into an expensive facility suggests their primary concern is accessing your assets. What can I do? Several things. First, we can set up legal protections to ensure no one can force you to sell your property or move against your will. Second, we can create documentation that proves your mental competency so they can't claim you're unable to make your own decisions. And third, Robert smiled. Third, if you want to teach them a lesson about underestimating you, we can arrange for that too. Over the next month, Robert and I put together a comprehensive plan. We documented my mental competency with medical evaluations and cognitive tests. We set up legal protections for my house and my known assets, and then we planned my surprise. Mrs. Alvarez, Robert said during our final meeting, are you sure you want to do this? Once we reveal your financial situation, there's no going back. I'm sure. It's time my family learned that this old woman is smarter than they think. The opportunity came sooner than expected. 2 weeks later, Diego called with urgent news. Mom, we found a buyer for your house. They're offering $320,000, which is more than we expected. We need to move fast before they change their mind. You found a buyer? I never said I was selling. Mom, we talked about this. You agreed to consider Sunset Manor. I said I'd think about it. I never agreed to sell my house. There was a pause. Then Jessica's voice came on the line. Maria, we've already put a deposit down at Sunset Manor. They're holding a room for you, but we need to confirm by Friday. You put a deposit down without asking me? We were trying to help. These places fill up fast, and we didn't want you to miss out. How much was the deposit? $5,000, Diego said quietly. You spent $5,000 of your own money to reserve a room I never said I wanted? Well, actually, Jessica's voice was getting sharper. We were hoping you could reimburse us for the deposit, since it's for your benefit. There it was. They'd spent money they didn't have, gambling that they could pressure me into selling my house to pay them back. I'm not reimbursing you for anything, and I'm not selling my house. Mom, be reasonable, Diego pleaded. We're trying to help you. No, you're trying to help yourselves, and I'm done with this conversation. I hung up the phone and immediately called Robert. It's time, I told him. Are you ready? I've been ready for months. The next day, Diego and Jessica showed up at my house unannounced. They looked stressed, desperate even. Mom, we need to talk, Diego said as they pushed their way into my living room. I thought we already talked. Jessica was pacing like a caged animal. Maria, you're being incredibly selfish. We've gone out of our way to find you the perfect place to live, and you're acting like we're trying to hurt you. Aren't you? Of course not. We love you. You love my house. There's a difference. Diego sat down heavily on my couch. Mom, I'm going to be honest with you. We're in some financial trouble. The deposit for Sunset Manor maxed out our credit card, and we were counting on the house sale to help us get back on our feet. Finally, the truth. What kind of financial trouble? Jessica shot Diego a warning look, but he was too stressed to care about keeping up appearances. We bought a bigger house last year thinking I'd get promoted. But the promotion fell through, and now we're struggling with 2 mortgage payments. 2 mortgages? We haven't been able to sell our old house. The market's been slow, and we're paying mortgages on both properties. Plus, Jessica's car payment and the credit cards and… Diego trailed off, realizing he was saying too much. I looked at these 2 people who had been pressuring me to give up my independence to solve their financial problems, and I felt a cold satisfaction. So you thought you'd solve your money problems by forcing me to sell my house? It's not like that, Jessica protested. We genuinely think Sunset Manor would be better for you. At $4,500 a month. You can afford it with the proceeds from the house sale. For how long? Jessica waved her hand dismissively. Long enough? Long enough for what? For me to die so you don't have to worry about the cost anymore? That's not what I meant. Isn't it? You said old people don't need money. You said my needs are simple. You've been treating me like I'm already dead, just waiting for the paperwork to be finalized. Diego looked ashamed, but Jessica was getting angry. Maria, you're being dramatic. We're trying to do what's best for everyone. What's best for you, you mean? Fine. Yes, it would help us if you sold the house, but it would also help you. You'd have professional care, activities, people your own age to socialize with. And you'd have my house money to pay your bills. We're family. Families help each other. You're right, Jessica. Families do help each other. Which is why I've decided to help you. Both of them looked up with sudden hope. You'll sell the house? Diego asked. No, I'm going to help you in a different way. I walked to my kitchen and returned with a folder I'd prepared for this moment. Jessica, you said old people don't need money. You said our needs are simple. You've made it very clear that you think I'm too old and too stupid to manage my own finances. I never said you were stupid. You didn't have to. Your actions said it for you. I opened the folder and pulled out the first document, a bank statement showing a balance of $127,000. Jessica's eyes widened. What is this? This is one of my savings accounts, the one at First National Bank. I pulled out the second statement. This is my account at Community Credit Union, $89,000. Diego was staring at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. I pulled out the third statement, and this is my investment account at Merrill Lynch, $34,000. The silence in my living room was deafening. Jessica was trying to do math in her head. That's over $200,000. $250,000 to be exact, plus the value of my house, which you correctly estimated at around $320,000. Diego found his voice first. Mom, where did this money come from? From 50 years of hard work, smart saving, and careful investing. Your father and I weren't just poor immigrants, Diego. We were poor immigrants who understood the value of money. Jessica was staring at the bank statements like they might disappear if she blinked. Why didn't you tell us about this? Because I wanted to see what kind of people you really were. And now I know. What do you mean? I gathered up the statements and put them back in the folder. I mean that when you thought I was a poor old woman with nothing but a house, you tried to manipulate me into giving it up. You lied about my mental state, you pressured me to make decisions that benefited you, and you treated me like a burden you couldn't wait to get rid of. That's not true, Diego protested weakly, isn't it? Jessica, what were your exact words? Old people don't need money. You said my needs were simple, that I should be grateful you were even taking care of me. Jessica's face was turning red. I was trying to help you see reason. No, you were trying to help yourself to my assets. The difference is, you thought my assets were limited to this house. You had no idea that this simple old woman had $250,000 sitting in banks across town. But Mom, Diego said, if you have all this money, why are you living so modestly? Because your father and I learned that visible wealth makes you a target. We learned to live below our means, to save for the future, to be prepared for emergencies. Apparently, those are lessons I failed to teach you. Jessica was getting desperate. Maria, this changes everything. With this kind of money, you could afford the best care facilities. You could live anywhere you want. You're right, I could, but I choose to live here, in the house your father and I bought and paid for. But what about our situation? What about the deposit we put down? I looked at Jessica with all the contempt I'd been hiding for months. What about it? You made a financial decision without consulting me. You gambled that you could pressure me into paying for it. You lost. But we're family. Family doesn't lie to each other. Family doesn't try to steal from each other. Family doesn't treat their elders like burdens to be disposed of. Diego was starting to understand the magnitude of what they'd lost. Mom, I'm sorry. We made mistakes, but we can fix this. We can start over. Can we? Can you look me in the eye and tell me you weren't planning to put me in that facility and forget about me? Diego couldn't meet my gaze. Can you tell me you weren't hoping I'd die quickly so you wouldn't have to worry about the monthly fees? Mom, that's not. Can you tell me you ever once asked what I wanted instead of telling me what you thought was best for me? The silence stretched between us like a chasm. I thought so. Jessica made one last desperate attempt. Maria, please, we're sorry, we'll do better, but we really need help with our financial situation. And I'm going to help you. Hope flickered in her eyes. I'm going to teach you the same lesson your father and I learned when we came to this country with nothing. I'm going to teach you that money isn't something you're entitled to, it's something you earn. What does that mean? I walked to my desk and pulled out another folder. It means I've hired a financial advisor to help you create a budget and a debt repayment plan. It means I've found you both second jobs to help you earn the money you need to pay your bills. Second jobs? Jessica, there's a house cleaning service that's looking for reliable workers. The pay is $12 an hour and they provide transportation. Jessica's face went white. You want me to clean houses? I cleaned houses for 30 years. It's honest work. But I have a college degree. So do a lot of people who clean houses. Pride doesn't pay bills, Jessica. I turned to Diego. And you, mijo, there's a construction company that needs weekend workers. $15 an hour plus overtime. Mom, I already work full-time. So did your father. So did I. When you need money, you work for it. This is ridiculous, Jessica snapped. We're not going to take menial jobs just because you want to teach us some lesson about hard work. Then you'll lose both your houses and file for bankruptcy. Your choice. Diego looked at the information I'd given him. Mom, even with these jobs, it's going to take us years to get out of debt. It took your father and me 12 years to save enough to buy this house. Good things take time. But what about the deposit for Sunset Manor? We'll lose that money. You should have thought about that before you spent money you didn't have on something I didn't want. Jessica was getting hysterical. This is insane. You have $250,000 and you're going to let your own son lose his house? I'm going to let my son learn the same lessons his father and I learned. That money isn't free. That you don't spend what you don't have. That family means supporting each other, not using each other. But we are family. Are we? Because family members don't try to have each other declared incompetent. Family members don't lie about each other's mental state. Family members don't treat each other like ATMs. I walked to my front door and opened it. You have a choice to make. You can take the jobs I found for you, follow the budget plan, and earn your way out of debt like responsible adults. Or you can continue to act like entitled children and face the consequences. And if we take the jobs? Diego asked quietly. Then maybe, over time, we can rebuild our relationship. Maybe you can earn back my trust and my respect. And the money? Your savings? My money stays exactly where it is. In accounts that you'll never have access to, managed by people who understand that it's mine to do with as I please. Jessica was crying now, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage and frustration. This isn't fair. We're your family. That money should be ours. Why? Because you married my son? Because you think old people don't need money? Because we need it more than you do. No, Jessica. You want it more than I need it. There's a difference. Diego stood up slowly. Mom, I know we made mistakes, but cutting us off completely, that seems harsh. I'm not cutting you off. I'm giving you the opportunity to prove you're worth having a relationship with. By making us take jobs we don't want? By making you take responsibility for your own lives instead of expecting me to solve your problems. After they left, I sat in my kitchen and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. For the first time since Carlos died, I wasn't worried about someone trying to manipulate me or take advantage of me. The next few weeks were quiet. Diego called once to ask if I was serious about the jobs, and I told him I was. Jessica sent me a long text message explaining why house cleaning was beneath her, and I deleted it without responding. But then something interesting happened. Diego took the construction job. He called me on a Saturday evening, exhausted but with something different in his voice. "Mom, I wanted you to know I started the weekend job." "How was it?" "Hard. Really hard. I forgot how physical construction work is." "Your father did it for 35 years. "I know, I'm starting to understand what that means." It was a small step, but it was a step. Jessica, on the other hand, refused to take the cleaning job. Instead, she got a part-time position at a retail store that paid less but felt more appropriate for someone with her education. Over the next few months, I watched my son slowly transform. The weekend construction work was teaching him lessons about money and effort that his office job never had. He was learning what it meant to earn every dollar, to come home exhausted but proud of what he'd accomplished. Jessica was learning different lessons. The retail job barely made a dent in their debt, and she was starting to understand that pride was a luxury they couldn't afford. 6 months after our confrontation, Diego came to visit me alone. "Mom, I owe you an apology." "For what?" "For everything. For treating you like you couldn't make your own decisions. For trying to pressure you into selling your house. For letting Jessica convince me that we knew what was best for you. And for underestimating you. I had no idea you and Dad had saved so much money. I had no idea how smart you were about finances. Your father and I didn't advertise our business, mijo. We learned that people treat you differently when they know you have money." "Is that why you never told me about the savings?" "Partly. But also because I wanted to see what kind of man you'd become when you thought there was nothing to inherit." Diego winced. "And what did you see?" "I saw a man who was willing to sacrifice his mother's independence for his own financial convenience. I'm ashamed of that." "Good. Shame can be a teacher if you let it." We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Diego asked the question I'd been waiting for. "Mom, what happens now? With us, I mean." "That depends on you. Are you going to keep working the construction job?" "Yes. Actually, I've learned a lot, and I'm thinking about starting my own contracting business on the side." "That's good. Building something of your own." "And Jessica, she's struggling. The retail job isn't enough, and she's starting to realize she might have to take that cleaning job after all." "Pride is expensive, Diego. Sometimes we can't afford it." "She's also been asking about you, about your money." "What about it?" "She wants to know if there's any way, if we could maybe borrow some of it, just to get caught up on our bills." I looked at my son, this man I'd raised and loved and been disappointed by, and saw something I hadn't seen in years: humility. "What do you think I should do?" "Honestly, I think you should say no." "Why?" "Because we need to learn to solve our own problems. Because borrowing money from you would just be another way of taking advantage of you. Because we need to prove we can be responsible before we ask for help." I smiled. "That's the smartest thing you've said in months." "So you won't lend us the money?" "Not a penny, but I'll tell you what I will do." Diego looked hopeful. "If you and Jessica can get your finances under control on your own, if you can pay off your debts and learn to live within your means, then maybe we can talk about other ways I might help you in the future." "What kind of help?" The kind that builds you up instead of bailing you out. Maybe help with a down payment on a business. Maybe college funds for grandchildren I haven't met yet. Maybe investments in your future instead of payments for your past mistakes. Diego's eyes filled with tears. You'd do that? After everything we put you through? I'd do that for the son who learns from his mistakes and becomes a better man because of them. And if we don't, if we can't get our act together, then my money stays exactly where it is and you'll have learned an expensive lesson about taking family for granted. A year has passed since that conversation, and I'm happy to report that Diego has kept his word. He's still working the construction job on weekends, and he started a small handyman business that's slowly growing. Jessica eventually swallowed her pride and took a job with the cleaning service I'd recommended. She hates it, but she's learning the value of honest work. They've managed to sell their old house and are slowly paying down their debts. It's been hard for them, but they're doing it without asking me for money. More importantly, they're treating me differently. Diego calls me regularly now, not to ask for anything, but just to talk. He asks about my day, my health, my plans. He listens when I talk instead of waiting for his turn to speak. Jessica is still working on her attitude, but she's made progress. She apologized for the "old people don't need money" comment, and she's stopped trying to manage my life for me. Last month, Diego brought me a business plan for expanding his handyman service. Not to ask for money, but to get my advice. He wanted to know what I thought about his projections, his marketing strategy, his plans for growth. "Mom," he said as we went over the numbers, "I never realized how much you and Dad knew about business and money. I wish I'd asked for your advice years ago instead of assuming you didn't understand these things." "We were always here, mijo. You just weren't ready to listen." "I'm listening now. I know, and I'm proud of you for that. As for my $250,000, it's still sitting safely in my accounts, earning interest and growing slowly but steadily. I've updated my will to reflect the lessons I've learned about my family. Diego will inherit something, but not everything, and not until he's proven he can handle it responsibly. I've also set aside money for causes that matter to me. Scholarships for immigrant students, support for elderly people facing financial abuse, programs that teach financial literacy to young families. Jessica was wrong about old people not needing money. We need money for the same reasons everyone else does: security, independence, the ability to help others, and the power to make our own choices about our lives. But more than that, we need respect. We need to be seen as whole people with wisdom and experience, not as burdens waiting to be managed or assets waiting to be inherited. My daughter-in-law thought she could manipulate a simple old woman into giving up her independence and her home. She thought I was too old and too stupid to understand what was happening to me. She was wrong on every count. The $250,000 surprise wasn't just about the money. It was about showing her that underestimating people based on their age is a dangerous mistake. It was about proving that this old woman was smarter, more prepared, and more capable than anyone gave her credit for. And the biggest surprise of all? Teaching that lesson didn't just change Jessica and Diego, it changed me too. It reminded me that I'm not just someone's mother or someone's burden. I'm Maria Alvarez, a woman who came to this country with nothing and built something beautiful through hard work and smart choices. I'm 71 years old, I have $250,000 in the bank, and I'm nobody's fool. And that's worth more than all the money in the world.